Greetings to you from wherever you are, and welcome to East African Folktales. This is going to focus on fairy tales, East African fairy tales. Let's begin. It was said that there were two brothers, the children of one mother and of one father. The name of the elder was Anpu, and Bata was the name of the younger. Anpu had a house and a wife, and Bata lived with him like a younger brother. It was Bata who made the clothes. He tended and herded his cattle in the field. He plowed the lands and did the hard work during the time of harvest and kept the account of everything that related to the fields. And Bata was a most excellent farmer, and his like there was not in the whole countryside. And behold, the power of God was in him, and very many days passed during which Anpu's young brother tended his flocks and herds daily, and he returned to his house each evening loaded with a field produce of every kind. And when he returned from the fields, he set food before brothers, his elder brother, who sat with his wife drinking and eating. And then Bata went out to the byre and slept with the cattle. On the following morning, as soon as it was day, Bata took bread cakes newly baked and set them before Anpu, who gave him food to take with him to the fields. Then Bata drove out the cattle into the fields to feed. As he walked behind them, they said to him, "The pasture is good in such and such a place." And he listened to their voices and took them where they wished to go. Thus the cattle in Bata's charge became exceedingly fine, and their calves doubled in number, and they multiplied exceedingly. And when it was the season for plowing, Ampu said to Bata, "Come, let us get our teams ready for plowing the fields and our implements, for the ground have appeared and it is in proper condition for the plow. Go to the fields and take the seed corn with you today, and at daybreak tomorrow we will do the plowing." This is what he said to him, and Bata did everything which Anpu had told him. The next morning, as soon as it was daylight, the two brothers went into the fields with their teams and plows, and they plowed the land, and they were exceedingly happy as they plowed, from the beginning of their work to the very end thereof. Now, when the two brothers had been living in this way for a considerable time, they were in the fields of one day. They were in the fields one day plowing, and Ampu said to Bata, "Run back to the farm and fetch me some more seed corn." And Bata did so. When he arrived there, he found his brother's wife seated, dressing her hair, and he said to her, "Get up and get me some seeds that I may hurry back to the field, for Anpu ordered me not to loiter on the way." Ampu's wife said to him, "Go yourself to the grain shed and open the bin and take out as much corn as you wish. I would fetch it for you myself, only I'm afraid that my hair would fall down on the way." Then the young man went to the bin and filled a very large jar full of grain, for it was his desire to carry as a large quantity of seed corn. He lifted up on his shoulder the pot and was filled full of wheat and barley, which was filled full of wheat and barley, and came out of the shed with it. And Ampu's wife said to him, "How much grain have you on your shoulders?" And Bata said to her, "Three measures of barley and two measures of wheat, all in which are 5 measures of grain. That is what I have on my shoulders." These were the words he spoke to her, and she said to him, "How strong you are! I have been observing your vigorousness day by day." And her heart inclined to him. She entreated him to stay with her, promising to give him beautiful apparel if he would do so. Then the young man became filled with fury like a panther of the south because of her words. And when she saw how angry he was, she became terribly afraid. And he said to her, "Verily, you are to me as my mother, and my husband is as my father, and your husband is as my father. And being my elder brother, he has provided me with the means of living. You have said to me what ought not to be said, and I pray you will not repeat it. On my part, I shall tell no man of it." and you must never declare the matter to no man or woman. Then Bata took up his load on his shoulders and departed to the field, where he arrived at the place where his elder brother was. They continued their ploughing and labored diligently at their work. When the evening was come, the elder brother returned to his house, and having loaded himself with the products of their field, Bata drove his flocks and herded them back to the farm and put them in their enclosure. And behold, Anpu's wife was smitten with fear because of the words she had spoken to Bata, and she took some grease and a piece of linen, and she made herself to appear like a woman who had been assaulted, and whom had been violently beaten by her assailant. For she wished to say to her husband, "Your young brother has beaten me sorely." And when Anpu returned in the evening according to his daily custom and arrived at his house, he found his wife lying on the ground in the condition of one who had been assaulted with violence. She did not appear to pour water over his hands according to custom. She did not light a fire before him, and his house was in darkness, and she was lying prostrate and sick. And her husband said to her, "Who have you been? Who has been talking to you?" And she said to him, "No one has been talking to me except your young brother. When he came to fetch the seed corn, he found me sitting alone, and he spoke words of love to me, and he told me to tie up my hair. But I would not listen to him, and I said to him, 'Am I not like your mother? Is not your elder brother like your father?' Then he was greatly afraid and begged me to prevent me from telling you about this matter. Now, if you do not kill him, I shall kill myself, since I have complained to you about his words, and when he comes back in the evening, what will what he will do to me is manifest." Then the elder brother became like a panther of the southern desert with wrath, and he seized his dagger and sharpened it, and went and stood behind the stable door, so that he might slay Bata when he returned in the evening and came to the byre to bring in his cattle. And when the sun was about to set, Bata loaded himself with products of the field of every kind according to his custom, and returned to the farm. And as he was coming back, the cow that led the herd said to Bata as he was entering the byre, "Verily, your elder brother is waiting with his dagger to slay you. Flee you from behind him." And Bata hearkened to the words of the leading cow. And when the second cow, as she was about to enter into the briar, spoke to him as did the first cow, Bata looked under the door of the briar and saw the feet of his elder brother as he stood behind the door with his dagger in his hand. Then he set down his load upon the ground uh, and ran away as fast as he could. And Ampu followed him, grasping his dagger. And Bata cried out to Hamakis, the sun god, and said, "Oh, my fair lord, you are he who judges between wrong and right." And Ra hearkened to his words and caused a great stream to come into being to separate the two brothers, and the water was filled with crocodiles. Now Anpu was on one side of the stream and Bata on the other, and Anpu wrung his hands together in bitter wrath because he could not kill his brother. Then Bata cried out to Anpu on the other bank, saying, Stay where you are until daylight, and until the disk, that is the sun god, rises. I will enter into judgment with you in his presence, for it is he who sets right what is right and what is wrong. I shall never I shall never more live with you, and I shall never again dwell in the place where you are. I'm going to the valley of the acacia. And when the day dawned, there was light on earth, and Ra Hamakis was shining. And the two brothers looked at each other, and Bata spoke to Ampu, saying, "Why have you pushed me to this treacherous way, wishing to slay me without first hearing what I had to say? I am your brother, younger than you are. You are as a father, and your wife as a mother to me. Is that not so? Why did you send me to fetch Sidcon for our work? It was your wife who said, 'I pray you stay with me.' But behold, the fact has been misinterpreted by you, and the reverse of what happened has been put before you." Then Bata explained everything to Ampu and made him understand exactly what had taken place between him and his brother's wife. And Bata swore by the oath of Rahamaki, saying, by Marcus, to lie in wait for me and to pursue me with your knife in your hand, ready to slay me, was a wicked and abominable thing to do. And Bata took from his side the knife which he used in cutting reeds, and drove it into his body, and he sat down, fainting upon the ground. Then Anpu cast himself with bitter curses, and he lifted up his voice and wept, and he did not know how to cross over the stream to the bank where Bata was, because of the crocodiles. And Bata cried out to him, saying, Behold, you are ready to remember against me one bad deed of mine, but you do not remember my good deed, even if or even one of the many things I've done for you, but that have been done for you by me. Shame on you. Behold, you are ready to remember against me one bad deed of mine, but you do not remember my good deeds, or even one of the many things I've done for you that have been done for you by me. Shame on you. Get you back to your house and tend to your cattle, for I will no longer stay with you. I will depart through the valley of the acacia, but you shall come to minister to me. Therefore, take heed of what I say. Now know that certain things are about to happen to me. I'm going to cast a spell on my heart that I may be able to place it on the flower of the acacia tree. When this acacia is cut down, my heart shall fall to the ground, and you shall come to seek for it. You shall pass 7 years in seeking for it, but let not your heart be sick with disappointment, for you shall find it. When you findest it, place it in a vessel of cold water, and verily my heart shall live again, and shall make answer to him that attacks me. And you shall know what happened to me by the following sign. A vessel of beer shall be placed in your hand, and shall froth and run over. Another vessel of wine in it shall be placed in your hand, and it shall become sour. Then make no tarrying, for indeed these things shall happen to you. So the younger brother departed for the valley of Acacia, and the elder brother departed to his house, and Ampu's hand was laid upon his head. He cast dust upon himself in grief for Bata, and when he arrived in his house, he slew his wife and threw her to the dogs, then sat down and mourned for his brother. And when many days had passed, Bata was living alone in the valley of Acacia, and when he spent his days in the hunting the wild animals of the desert, and at night he slept under the acacia on top of the flowers of which rested his heart. And after many days he built himself with his own hand a large house in the valley of Acacia, and it was filled with beautiful things of every kind, for he delighted in the possession of a house. And as he came forth one day from his house, he met the company of gods, and they were on their way to work out their plan in the realms. And one of them said to him, Hail, Bata, you bull of gods, bull of the gods, have you not been living here alone since the time when you did forsake your town through your wife, through the wife of your elder brother Anpu? Behold, his wife has been slain by him, and moreover, you have made an adequate answer on the attack which he made upon you. And their hearts were sore indeed for Bata. Then Rahamakis said to Nemu, Fashion a wife for Bata, so that you, O Bata, may not dwell alone. And Nemu made a wife to live with Bata, and her body was more beautiful than the body of any other woman in the whole country, and the essence of every god was in her. And the seven Huata goddesses came to her, and they said, She shall die by the sword. And Bata loved her most dearly. She lived in his house. He passed all his days hunting the wild animals in the desert, so that he might bring them and lay them before her. And he said to her, Go not Go not out of the house, lest the river carry you off, for I not know how to deliver you from it. My heart is set upon the flower of the acacia. If any man find it, I must do battle with him for it. And he told her everything that had happened concerning his heart. And many days afterwards, when Bata had gone out hunting as usual, the young woman went out of the house and walked under the acacia tree which was close by, and the river saw her, and sent its waters rolling after her, and she fled before them and ran away into the house. And the river said, "I love her." And the acacia took to the river a lock of her hair, and the river carried it to him and cast it on the bank at the place where the washermen washed the clothes of Pharaoh. Life, strength, and health be to him, and the odor of the lock of hair passed into the clothing of Pharaoh. When the washermen of Pharaoh quarreled among themselves, saying, "There's an odor as perfumed oil in the clothes of Pharaoh," and quarrels among them went on daily, and at length they did not know what they were doing. And overseer of the washermen of Pharaoh walked to the river, being exceedingly angry because of the quarrels that came before him daily. And he stood still on the spot that was exactly opposite to the lock of hair as it lay in the water. Then he sent a certain into the water to fetch it, and when he brought it back, the overseer, finding it had an exceedingly sweet odor, took it to Pharaoh. And the scribes and magicians were summoned into the presence of Pharaoh, and he said to him, "This lock of hair belongs to a maiden Ra, Hamakis. The essence of every god is in her, and it comes to you from a strange land as a salutation to praise to you. We therefore pray you send ambassadors into every land to seek her out. As concerning the ambassador of the valley of the Acacia, we beg you to send a strong escort with him to fetch her. We beg you send a strong escort with him to fetch her." And his majesty said to them, "What we have decided is very good," and he dispatched the ambassadors. And when many days had passed, the ambassadors who had been dispatched to foreign lands returned to make a report to his majesty. But when they had gone to the valley of the Acacia, but those who had gone to the valley of Acacia did not come back, for Bata had slain them, with the exception of one who returned to tell the matter to his majesty. Then his majesty dispatched foot soldiers and horsemen and charioteers to bring back the young woman, and there was also with them a woman who had in her hands beautiful trinkets of all kinds, such as was suitable for maidens, to give to the young woman. And this woman returned to him with the young woman, and everyone in all the parts of the countries rejoiced with her arrival. His majesty loved her exceedingly, and he paid homage as the great august one, the chief wife. And he spoke to her and made her tell him what had become of her husband. And she said to his majesty, "I pray you cut down the acacia tree and then to destroy it." Then the king caused men and bowmen to set out with axes to cut down the acacia tree. When they arrived at the valley of the acacia, they cut down the flower on which was the heart of Bata, and he fell down dead at that very moment of evil. And the following morning, when the light had come upon the earth, the acacia had been cut down. Ampu's elder brother went into his house, sat down, and he washed his hands. One gave him a vessel of beer, and it frothed up, and the froth ran over. One gave him a vessel containing wine, and it was sour. Then he grasped his staff, and taking his sandal, his apparel, and his weapon, which he used in fighting and hunting, he set out to march to the valley of Acacia. And when he had arrived there, he went into Bata's house and found that his young brother there lying dead on his bed. And when he looked up upon his young brother, he wept on what he was seeing, that he was dead. Then he set out to seek the heart of Bata under the acacia, where he was wont to sleep at night. And he passed 3 years in seeking for it, but found it not. And when the fourth year of his searching had begun, his heart craved to return to him, and he said, "I will thither depart tomorrow morning." And it was he said to himself, and that was what he said to himself. And on the following day he walked about under the acacia all day long, looking for Bata's heart. And as he was returning to the house in the evening, and was looking about him, still searching for it, he found a seed, which he took back with him, and behold, it was Bata's heart. Then he fetched a vessel of cold water, and having placed the seed in it, he sat down according to his custom. And when night came, the heart absorbed all the water, and Bata on his bed trembled in all his member, and looked at Anpu while he had remained in the vessel of water. And Anpu took up the vessel within his brother's heart, which had absorbed the water, and Bata's heart ascended to his throne in his body, and Bata became as he had been aforetime. And the two brothers embraced each other and spoke to each other. And Bata said to Anpu, "Behold, I am about to take the form of a great bull with beautiful hair and a disposition which is unknown. When the sun rises, do mount my back, and we will go to the place where my wife is, and answer I will make answers for myself. Then shall you take me to the place where the king is, for he will bestow great favors upon you, and he will heap gold and silver upon you because you will have brought me to him. For I am going to become a great and wonderful thing, and men and women shall rejoice because of me throughout the country. On the following day, Bata changed himself into the form of which he had spoken to his brother. Then Ampu seated himself on his back early in the morning, and when he had come to the place where his king was, and his majesty had been informed where his king was, and his majesty had been informed concerning him, when he had great he looked at him, and he had very great joy in him, and he made a great festival, saying, "This is a very great wonder which have happened." And the people rejoiced everywhere throughout the whole country. And Pharaoh loaded Ampu with silver and gold, and dwelt in his native town. And the king gave him large number of slaves and very many possessions. And Pharaoh loved him very much, for far more than any other person in the whole land. And when many days had passed by, the bull and when many days had passed by, the bull went into the house of purification, and stood up in the place where the august lady was, and said to her, "Look upon me, I am alive in very truth." And she said to him, "Who are you?" And he said to her, "I am Bata. Whom did you cause the acacia which held my heart to be destroyed by Pharaoh? Well, did you know that you would kill me? Nevertheless, I am alive indeed, in the form of a bull. Look at me." And the august lady was greatly afraid because of what she had said concerning her husband to the king. And the bull departed from the place of purification, and his majesty went to tarry in her house and to rejoice with her. She ate and drank with him, and the king was exceedingly happy. And the august lady said to his majesty, "Say these words, whatsoever she says, I will hearken to her for her sake. I will hearken to for her sake. Whatsoever she says, I will hearken to for her sake. And swear an oath by God you will do them." And the king hearkened to everything she spoke, saying, "I beseech you to give me the liver of this bull to eat, for he is wholly useless for any kind of work." And the king cast many times the request which he had uttered, and Pharaoh's heart was exceedingly sore thereat. On the following morning, when it was day, the king proclaimed a great feast, and ordered the bull to be offered up as an offering. And one of the chief royal slaughterers of his majesty was brought to slay the bull. And after the knife had been driven into him, while he was still on the shoulders of men, the bull shook his neck, and two drops of blood fell by the jambs of the doorway of his majesty, one by one jump of the Pharaoh's door, and the other by the other. And they became immediately two mighty acacia trees, each one of greatest magnificence. Then one went and reported to his majesty, saying, "Two mighty acacia trees whereat his majesty will marvel exceedingly, have sprung up during the night by the great door of his majesty." And the men and women rejoiced in them everywhere in the country, and the king made offerings to them. And many days after this, his majesty put on his tiara of lapis lazuli, and hung a wreath of flower of every kind about his neck. And he mounted his chariot of silver gold, and went forth from the palace to see the other acacia tree. And when the august lady came following the Pharaoh in a chariot drawn by horses, and his majesty sat down under one acacia, and the august lady sat down under the other. And when she was seated herself, the acacia spoke to his wife, saying, "O woman, you are full of guile. I am Bata, and I am alive, even though you have entreated me evilly. When did you try to kill me? When did you try to make Pharaoh to cut down the acacia which held my heart, that you would kill me? When I transformed myself into a bull, you did cause me to be slain." And several days after this, the august lady was eating and drinking at the table of his majesty the king. She was enjoying her society greatly, and said to his majesty, Swear to me an oath by God, saying, I will hearken to whatever the August lady shall say to me for her sake, and let her say on. And he hearkened to everything which she said, and she said, I entreat you to cut down 2 acacia trees and let them be made into great beams. For the king had and the king hearkened to everything she said. Several days after this, his majesty made cunning woodmen to go down and cut the acacia trees of Pharaoh. And while August lady was standing and watching they are being cut down, a splinter flew from one of them into her mouth, and she knew she had conceived, and the king did for everything which her heart desired. And many days after this happened, she brought forth a man child. One said to his majesty, a man child has been born to you, and a nurse was found for him, and the women to watch over him and tend him. And people rejoiced throughout the whole land. And the king sat down to enjoy a feast, and began to call the child by his name, and loved him very dearly. And at the same time, the king gave him the title of royal son of Cash. Some time after this, his majesty appointed him Erpa of the whole country, and when he had served the office of Erpa for many years, his majesty flew up to heaven, that is, he died. And the king, Bata, said, let all the chief princes be summoned before me, so that I may inform them about everything which have happened to me. And they brought his wife. He entered into judgment with her, and the sentence which he passed upon her was carried out. And Anpu, the brother of the king, was brought to his majesty, and the king made him emperor of the whole country. And when his majesty had reigned for him over 20 years, he departed to life, that is, he died, and his brother Anpu took his place in the day of which he was buried. Here ends the book, happily in peace. Under the chapter of his Under the heading of this chapter, may we include the story of the shipwrecked traveler. The text of this remarkable story is written in the hieratic character upon a roll of papyrus, which is preserved in the Imperial Library at St. Petersburg. It is probable that a layer of facts underlies the story, but the form in which we have it justifies us assigning it to a place among fairy stories of ancient Ham or East African fairy tales. Prefixed to this narrative of the shipwrecked traveler is the following. Let me not take you through all of this, but let's our story end at the way it has ended. This is another fairy tale. Wow! But I hope you enjoyed the last one about the you've read about fairy tales. I hope you enjoyed that one about Ampu and Bata. Thank you.